Hey, welcome everyone. Grab that last bite, glass of wine. I want to say welcome to everyone. This is the Executive Voices Speaker Series, and I will tell you, having been at many of them, they are always such a delight. I'm Patty Fontenot, and I am with Reach Out and Read Colorado, and I'd like to welcome you here today. And I'd also like to thank our sponsors, which includes Mercer, who has been sponsored from the very beginning, HRQ, which out there they said they were such a big fan of this that they will sponsor it all the time. Lee Hecht Harrison, also known as LHH, as well as the Daniels College of Business, which is the responsible for this gorgeous room. So welcome, and I'd like to turn this over to Michelle Delman, who is the Executive Director of the Daniels College of Business. And did a lot.
Yes, thank you, Patty. Yeah, I'm Michelle Delman. I'm the Executive Director of the Daniels College of Business, and I am an alum of Executive Voices. It's been a pleasure to be involved. And so I just want to again welcome you and thank you for being here. Welcome you to Daniels College of Business. Welcome you to DU. We're so glad that you're here. At Daniels, right, what we're doing is we're shaping our future leaders, our future business leaders. So it seems very fitting that we have this great panel here with us this afternoon to talk about the future of leadership. It's very fitting. So thanks again for being here. Thanks for having your group here, and I'll just turn it over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Michelle. Well, and also Michelle is an Executive Voices alum as well. And if you've been to any of our events, you'll know that our alums usually offer to host it because they find benefit and value. As a matter of fact, I'm looking out, and there are quite a few of you that have been to all, if not most, of our Executive Voices events. So thank you for all of you who have been to multiple of them. And today, of course, we're talking about leadership and the future of work. If you think about it, the last few years has been an upheaval for just about everything, right? Talking about politics, the economy, of course, the way that we work. Everything that we thought was true about work has been flipped on its head. So what does that mean for the future leaders? What does that mean for those of you that are leading your organizations to the next phase? What are we supposed to do? Should we focus on AI? Should we focus on digitalization? How are you handling the repercussions and the effects of the move to hybrid work? Well, all of those questions are going to be answered today, as well as a lot more, and that's what we have our amazing panelists for. We have Julie Tashida Brown, and she is the Chief Human Resources, actually it's Chief People and Cultural Officer, correct? Of Zayo, and I actually saw Julie speak in the same room. And you were pretty much in that same spot right there as well. It's where you belong, yes. And then we have Kelly Kaskaskas. I'm sure I didn't pronounce that right. Am I close? Not so much? All right. Okay. She is the COO of First Bank. And then, of course, we have the wonderful Director of the Future of Work for the State of Colorado, Ms. Catherine Keegan. Pretty amazing. And as you think about it now, I know we talked about the organization, but I want to bring it down first to the people. For the first time in history, we have 5, and in a couple of years, we will have 6 different generations in the workplace. Think about it. You have a silent generation who are still holding on to some of those key leadership positions, all the way down to, what's the new generation called? The Alpha, right? The Alpha? I'm not calling my kid an Alpha. He'll definitely try it. And everything in between. Actually, a show of hands with me here. How many of you, raise your hand if you're in the silent generation? The silent generation, and I can't remember the silent. So, 1928 to 1945. Any silent generations? No, interesting. All right. How about baby boomers? All right, a few of you guys. What about the Gen Xers? Okay. All right. How about the millennials or the Gen Y? All right. So we have a pretty good mix of people here. And my first question then is actually for Catherine. Catherine, what's the makeup of this? That's what we have right now. What about the makeup of the future of work? How's that different from today?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and already had some great conversations, so excited to continue that. So the makeup of the workforce of the future is very similar. We're going to have an intergenerational workforce for a very long time, like we've always had. I think the other interesting pieces is just how our actual labor force is changing in terms of size. So we have our baby boomer generation, they're working longer, but we are facing a retirement cliff. So thinking about how we leverage the skills of those older workers to bring on the new talent and to have that strategic planning and workforce development planning for people coming online is a big piece of it. We also have our diverse younger generation. So the last census showed us that for the first time, people under the age of 18 were majority people of color. So it's a completely different makeup than the makeup of our generations in the past. And as we think about designing workforce, education, employment practices, how are we reflecting on the experience of these people of color and bringing them in? So those are some of the two key pieces. We also just have declining birth rates. So we have fewer workers and lower labor force participation rates. So you'll often hear at workforce development events, we have 2 jobs for every worker. So people are a resource that we cannot take for granted anymore, and that's a big part of what you'll hear us touch on is how do we maximize the talent from across generations, across different experiences, and really retain those workers because you don't want to give them up. It's hard to find new ones.
Okay, I think you were asking about how we think about leadership in this era of multi-generations in one place. And you actually added an additional aspect as well. If you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion in this environment, because right now, let's face it, the majority of leadership remains as, Caucasian men. And if we have the majority of the people coming into the workforce looking very different, the policies, the rules, a lot of the programs are set up for a different generation of people. And that's something that, you didn't mention, but it could be really hard when I heard you say that, because it's very true. So we didn't get the full introduction, but Cheetah like the cat, and Cheetah Brown, responsible for people and culture at Zayo. I've been in human capital for 25 years at technology companies, so watching a lot of these changes. I'd say some of the biggest things you see now, not only is it around inclusion, right, and I think diversity is a piece of that, but there's all kinds of ageism really going in both directions, right? So you have a lot of the older generation who are like, hey, we're experienced. You know what we're doing? We've lived it, we've been there, we've done that. And then you have a lot of the newer generation who are like, yeah, but not this way. You don't know how to use technology, you're slow, you're outdated. So how do you think about bringing those groups of people together? Because they have to work together. So we spend a lot of time thinking about that. And I'll tell you up front, there's no easy answer. There's not a silver bullet to it. I mean, a lot of it really is working in cohorts and teams and getting people to really express what they mean by things. The next click down, because that first layer, it's not going to give you enough information for people to really connect in the way that they need to connect.
I like that. I like how you said, letting people layer down and say what it means to them. What have you seen at Zayo? Like, how have you incorporated this type of dialogue at Zayo?
As you say that, I'm going to add one more dimension to it. I think the other dimension that we have to think about as we're pulling different generations together is also the distributed workforce. Everyone's not in the same place. And let's face it, they used to be. I mean, for Zayo, pre-pandemic, we have 40% of our people in Colorado. Now it's 20. I'm across 50 states, Canada, Mexico, and 5 or 6 countries in Europe. And if I'm not bringing people together physically, I mean, it's a huge challenge. How do you culturally even get people to interact? How do you have connection? Much less, people who think the same way, but when you start to get different generations, different ethnicities, people, of all different ways of thinking, how do you really foster that collaboration? Again, we don't have it completely figured out, or I would be on an island somewhere because I would, but we spend a lot of time thinking about, again, how do you pull together cross-generational teams and teams in general? Really, it's not just age, it's gender, it's ethnicity, it's ways of thinking, it's location. And how do you pull them together, even like in a Zoom meeting, and this sounds so silly, but who started to use like the raise the hand and really foster the raise the hand? We have a whole set of, we call it like a conscious inclusion checklist, where we say, has everyone provided their opinion?
Did you make sure that everyone spoke? Who's being quiet? Who keeps interrupting? Is there a way that you can use backgrounds so people can add their perspectives in different ways? So I think you just have to start to get really creative to make sure you're hearing all the voices in the room, because they won't naturally always come out on their own.
That's really good. I know for a lot of my clients, we use a Mural or Muriel. Both of those platforms are really good. So the digital platforms, the digital whiteboards are amazing. If you use that with your teams. If anybody wants some information on them, just send me an email, and I can tell you which ones work with your, how they work with your system, your IT systems. They're fabulous. Julie, what about that first thing?
Thank you. I would say the same thing as Julie, is that there's not a silver bullet here. So we definitely understand generations and preferences. It's a data point, but it's one data point. So really trying to make sure that we, like Julie said, lean into the individual and make sure we get those individual voices heard. Listening sessions, employee engagement surveys, cross-functional engagement, things like that, to make sure we're breaking those. One thing, though, that really resonated with us, and Shannon, who's here as our Chief People Officer, brought this to our attention, specifically about the 5 generations in the workforce, was the age at which people feel that they have become an adult. So for the silent generation, they felt that they became an adult at age 16. For boomers, it was 18. Guess what it is for Gen Z? 26 years old is when they feel that they have reached adulthood, and making sure that we're aware of that as we found onboarding of different individuals. How do you expect somebody to navigate taking their benefits when they don't see themselves as a full adult?
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Tell it to my 18-year-old son, because he thinks he's an adult. So, Catherine, let's move to technology now. Okay, let's talk about AI. You cannot open up a newspaper or a business section without hearing about technology. How is it transforming the future of work, especially in leadership capacity?
Yeah, I'm curious who here has played around with ChatGPT. It's amazing, that's what I heard. I'm curious if someone feels like they have the most interesting use case of ChatGPT, because that's always a fun one. Yeah, I'm curious.
I was testing out
Testing out your vision for an organization to see if it would work. Okay, that's very good. I've heard people, when I ask that question, use it for planning workouts, for doing a grocery list when you have certain items in your cabinet or in your fridge, or when to keep under a certain budget. I've heard people do it for performance reviews, which I wouldn't recommend, but is used quite a bit. And so I think this is the perfect example. About a year ago, or just over a year ago, no one had access to ChatGPT unless you were really involved in these generative AI conversations. So we're seeing in the past, even 5 years ago, 3 years ago, artificial intelligence was something that was really reserved for tech companies or tech roles within companies to explore, hey, how are we embedding this into these functions of our jobs? And what the last few years has done is really spread it across all operations, all verticals, all pieces of work. So if you're not exploring that as a business and creating like an enterprise solution, you know your people are probably, as I do at the state, because we're not allowed to use it, is use it on my personal phone, and I email myself the answers for certain things. So I think that's one of the big pieces. Don't tell. I think that's one of the big pieces, is making sure that you're encouraging and creating a safe way to experiment with technology. The half-life of a tech skill is about 5 years. So if you're not creating that fertile playing ground for your teams, then they're quickly going to be outdated. Because in the past you could say, yep, I'm digitally literate, I know how to use Microsoft Office or a PC, and that doesn't get you very far anymore, and even learning the new tools is not going to get you very far. So a big part of the technological transformation is not even really the tech itself, but how do we create this culture of trying new technology out and embedding it across these pieces of our business so that we can be more efficient. And it can also be really fun, so, yeah.
I mean, Julie, that's your culture. right? That is what you really created. Will you give us some little insights? How do you do it?
Well, I'm going to lead with my same thing, but there's not one answer. I think everyone's trying to figure it out. But something you just said struck me, and then I'll answer the question more directly. We were just having a conversation as an executive leadership team about the use of AI. And we talked about at what point do you just want people experimenting, right? You want innovation, right? So you want everyone out there trying all kinds of different things in kind of an unrestrained way. So if marketing wants to use it to create content, they can. If you want to use it over here, like we use it in HR actually quite a bit. You can use it on an employee survey to try to figure out what the needs are. If you get 2,500 responses, you can use it on resumes. I mean, there's a zillion things. So there's one kind of beginning phase where you really want people out there experimenting because you don't want to stifle innovation. But then there comes a point where you really want to centralize it because you can't be so fragmented where you have people all over the business choosing their own tools and doing their own things. You have security issues, you have governance issues. So there's so much to it as you start to look at it from an organizational perspective. I think as the questions go on, we'll talk about it both from a leadership perspective. For now, I can talk really quick from a change management perspective, because I think it's a mindset shift and it's behavior change. So if you're looking at a group of 3,500 employees, guess what? They're scared. They're like, my job's going to go away because this thing that I don't even know or understand is going to take over. So how do you start to introduce to all the innovation? We need it. This is happening, and it's happening really fast. So how do you introduce it to organization in a way that feels safe so they're not scared, so they lean into it as opposed to fighting it? Because you can spend millions of dollars on the best, AI or, a training tool out of the box or however you want to do it. But if you don't get behavior change, you have no savings. You've done nothing. So we're starting actually at Zayo, a pretty big initiative, and I don't have it's not complete yet, but the way we're thinking about it is, because we're talking a lot about how the organization is growing and how we're going to use automation to further ourselves and to embed the organization. And basically what I'm saying is my commitment is an investment to our employees that we're bringing you along with us. You know what I mean? We're going to upskill you. We're going to bring you along. You will not be left by the wayside. So even at the very least, when they start to see things come out, they can hook it to a broader statement that they understand because we told them it's coming, and also it a little bit alleviates the fear. Now, the truth is, some jobs will go away. I mean, honestly, that's kind of part of what it is, but if you can commit to upskilling as many people as possible and start to really tangibly take those actions, then they start to trust you.
Do you want to add something?
I wanted to add too that I think that's a really great opportunity for some of those intergenerational work groups is in those playgrounds, because I think many people have assumptions about younger generations and their ability to use all sorts of technology, but what we know is that their ability to apply that in different contexts and to kind of pair that with their work is not where they're strongest, nor are their cybersecurity practices strongest. And at the same time, we often hear that younger generations can lack those human skills, the relational skills that older workers often, that's what they play, that's what they've been doing. So using those opportunities to connect the dots and try that out and create a safe space to play around with these technologies and build that camaraderie between generations is a cool way that we've seen it play out.
One more thing I'll add to that, we've been doing all kinds of research on it, so this is like the perfect moment for me to be sharing insights. One of the things that we're learning and that we've seen is that in a typical environment, you can have a training course, in-person, video, micro-learnings, all the typical things that we see. With AI, people are finding it's a lot better if you do an experimental learning, like in person with a group of people. So then, to your point, you grab people from multiple generations, ethnicities, genders, whatever it may be, and they're all learning it together at the same time tangibly. And that has been known to really help with the behavior change because then it feels less scary and everyone's doing it together. So that's something that we recently have embarked on.
And it's really great. Do you have a platform where is there anything you prefer to use for that type of a training?
well, I mean, honestly, it's Zoom at this point, because if you think about it, what we really have is we have people distributed everywhere. And so it's really more about the training itself and the tool you're training on to actually have the tangible use cases and have people doing them together. The other thing that we've experienced is that by keeping, believe it or not, the process or the way people think about it as similar as before, they're more likely to do it. So again, some of these things are just change management and behavioral change. But if you're trying to really bring a whole generation of people, multiple generations of people along for the journey, you need them to change or none of this works.
And in our last Executive Voices event, for those of you that weren't there, it was actually on that. The title of it was Tired of Change, You're Not Alone. You can add a couple little cuss words in there as well, if you so desire. But we had some really great discussions about change management. So if you're interested, that video is available on the website. You know, in talking about change, I mean, it's not just the organizations that are changing themselves and the things that are being done, but it's the people. If you think about your own organization, you've probably noticed that top-down, do what I say type of leadership does not work anymore. Shannon's like, yeah, that way says it all. Instead, I mean, we need that collaboration. I know with my executive coaching clients, it's pivoted from just like every single client to talking about stakeholder management, talking about collaboration, talking about really how do we affect the entire organization from a people perspective. So Kelly, if you wouldn't mind fielding this question, I'd love to ask you, what do you think the challenges that leaders are facing with this big change now?
Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I was thinking as preparing for this panel, what would it have been like to be a leader in the 1950s and you just tell somebody to do it and then they just do it? How crazy. I think it requires a lot more effort, but the other side of that is I think we're a lot more deliberate about it, a lot more intentional about making a change. You think through all the whys because you're going to have to defend all of the whys. And so you make better and more sound decisions with that. And then I think the other thing, Shannon and I chatted about this as well, there is a big space between compliance and actual acceptance here, and really trying to make sure we focus on that acceptance piece. We, last year, late in the year, made the change to have people who are working remotely 2 days a week come back into the office 1 more day a week, 3 days a week. And we planned and we agonized over it. And still, it was a significant change for people. We had to make sure we did all of our listening sessions, and people still had feelings about it. But we really tried hard to move from that compliance change to acceptance. And I won't say we're perfect there yet. It's a journey.
Are there any tips in that movement that really worked for you? Anything you can share?
One thing that we've been talking about is really the communication is the key to stakeholder engagement. So we're trying to do train the trainers, help the leaders, so engage them first. Let's talk about this. What do you think you're going to hear from your people? How do you think they're going to respond? Who's going to be challenging? What might we not be thinking about here? And then it really preps you better than for your leaders to explain it to their team that they lead versus this came from corporate kind of.
That's really good. I want to add another layer. For those of you that are going through a very similar type of a change, don't just do it to train the leaders. I suggest finding the people of influence, especially the ones that might be the naysayers. Find them, pick their brain, try to get them on board. What is it that they think the challenges might be? And see if you can have them become the ambassadors. That's what I've seen really well. Thank you. So we're talking about a lot of different things that are floating out there. Catherine, let's talk specific competencies though. We're talking the language of competencies now. What competencies are needed for all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big things that we're focused on as a state, as a priority, is to make competencies and skills the currency of the workforce, because for too long, one of the barriers that we've put up has been just a requirement for a 4-year bachelor's degree. I always like to use the example of, if you have a 4-year degree, you think about people you went to class with that also graduated with you, like, is that the best measure of someone's ability to do a job? I don't know. For some, yes. For others, not so much. And so how do we drill down into the actual competencies that are needed to do a job, and how do we value the wide variety of experiences that people have that can give you those competencies? So I always talk about my job at Panera in college was probably where I learned most of my soft skills, because it was right across the street from Fenway and people were nuts. And so those are some of the things that we're just trying to think about, just in general, is to like get into that language of competency and explore the different ways you can bring those in. When we talk about future-ready workers and leaders, we are looking for people that have a combination of skill sets. We need human skills, we need digital building blocks, and we need what we call business enablers. And this is based off looking at 14 million job profiles, a report that was creating the new sort of foundational skills of the digital economy. And they found that those individuals who, in their experience, in their resumes, were able to demonstrate those 3 sets of competencies, human skills, digital skills, and business enablers, were able to weather change and disruption more effectively, whether that was an economic downturn, whether that was a layoff, globalization, offshoring. They found that those individuals were able to weather that, but only about a fifth of workers were able to demonstrate those skills. So as we think about building the leaders of the future and just the workforce of the future, honing in on how are we talking about uniquely human skills, creativity, empathy, curiosity, and building those communication skills. The digital building blocks, so not just how to use technology, but how to apply data and leverage data in decision making. And then those business enablers, this is where project management, all of these things that kind of translate across industries and across roles, create this new foundation for the worker of the future that can weather all of the disruption and the 6 to 10 jobs that they're going to have in their lifetime. So those are some of the key competencies that we're really focused on.
I've never heard the term business enablers. Can you talk about that a little bit more if you don't mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think of those as a lot of what you can learn in like a work-based learning experience, or even in your first few months, few years on a job. It's those things that allow you to bring those human skills, digital building blocks, and apply them to a business problem at hand. So things like project management, communicating data, being able to kind of bring those specific occupational skills, so a lot of the technical competencies that might apply to your industry or that specific job someone has, that's where those come in.
That's great, thank you. And the next question, I want to get it exactly perfect because it's from Annette from Denver Water. Yeah, we raise your hand. Oh, she's right there. She's just shy. Her question was, how will we cultivate those leadership skills? And I know that both of you have amazing programs for this. So Julie, would you mind telling us first how you cultivate these skills that we're talking about?
When we cultivate these skills, I think from a leadership perspective, if you think about it, you need change management for change management, because your leaders are going through the exact same thing. They're scared too. So you have to, and again, I keep saying this, you have to make it a safe environment for them to learn to not know the answer, honestly, to be curious, to ask the questions, so then they're prepared to authentically lead their teams. So, I mean, some of the things that we're starting to do, we've created some training. We have a leadership journey, and we like to do a lot of cohorts with people, so we can get them in small groups where they can ask those questions, where they can be vulnerable, because to your point, half of it is the technology itself, right? And in a lot of cases, we're not going to be the people who are writing machine learning code. We're going to be the users of it. So the things that the leaders need to learn are a lot more of the soft skills and how to apply them and how to help their employees through that change cycle. So we do a lot of cohorts, we do a lot of small groups. We've started to we talk about technology and change a lot because we're trying to normalize it, because at a certain point, it's not a change anymore, it's just how the world works. So in our all hands, we have our CEO talk about it. He talks about the fact that, one of the things he's doing for us as a leadership team is every month we're having a different expert come in and do a deep dive on a different part of technology, machine learning, AI, whatever it may be. So he's basically saying, look at, the leadership team is being trained. Now we're going to train you, and just to really normalize it as much as possible within the environment to alleviate the fear, because I do think the biggest thing is going to be fear, because then people will be resistant to the change, and it'll be so much harder to implement it throughout the organization.
That's great. Can you talk a little bit more about that leadership journey, though? That's very interesting.
Yes, so what we've tried to do, and again, I want to level set, we're relatively small, so we're at the beginning of this journey ourselves. But what we do is we have fundamental training and development for all employees, all the individual contributors, just what are the things you need to know, as a part of this organization. And then we layer it. And then we, of course, have a series of trainings that we do for our managers. And then you take it up from there. We have our kind of what we consider our leadership group, and the kinds of trainings that we provide and the venue adapts as you move throughout the organization so that you can adapt the training for the audience itself. So then we go to our leaders, and then we go to our our executive team, and then we make it very clear that all of us, that our CEO, he'll stand up there and he'll say, I don't know everything, but I'm reading a lot, I'm getting out there, I'm doing everything I can to learn, so people see it at all levels of the organization.
That's great. That learning culture is amazing, and that actually is perfect for you, Kelly, because First Bank has such an interesting program. Would you mind telling the group about your program?
Yes, but well, first I was going to say, I want to make the case that I need another 4-year degree, because being on the campus today and seeing how beautiful it is, and they have a wine room there.
Well, that isn't always open for students.
But so at First Bank, all of our leaders come through our management training program. So I started in our management training program 20 years ago. And if you are not comfortable with change, you will soon gain comfort with change, because it will happen to you. So you go and show up at your branch, and then maybe once you get comfortable, we're going to move you to a different area of the bank to learn that other area of the bank. And during those times, it feels very uncomfortable. But in the rear view mirror is the best thing that's ever happened to you. First, you know how to navigate change. Second, you know all the areas of the bank and you become exposed. Third, you know a lot more people. So you might not know the answer, you know who to call. And then fourth, you're going to gain that humility. So you're coming into a job that other people have done or might know, and you're coming in.
And just to clarify, it's not just moving from branch to branch. Like, I first learned about First Bank's program because I met, his name is Adam, he's not here today. I met him at an HR event, and he is SVP, he's SVP of HR. So we started to talk, and I'm like, oh, how long have you been in HR? And I asked, how did you get into HR? Because most of us that are in HR, with a few exceptions, some people that are in here, so I apologize, but most of us don't go to school for it. We just kind of realize it's our function. And he's like, oh, 6 months. I'm like, you've been in HR 6 months and you're SVP of HR for First Bank? And I'm like, where were you before? He's like, oh, I was in operations. So your program is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you. I need glasses. I just realized that today. It's been. I'm going to pretend like I know what this says for our next question. This one's about employee engagement. So, Julie, help us learn a little bit more about employee engagement. You've talked somewhat about it, but can you give us some more specifics?
So about employee engagement, just in general?
Just in general, and then also what you're doing at SAIA for it.
So, employee engagement, the best way that I think about it is people are deeply passionate about what they do and they're willing to go the extra mile. Because it's one thing to show up and do your job day in and day out. It's another thing to really feel, I would say, embedded into the organization. So, to me, if you can reach a high level of employee engagement, your results are just going to be better because you have people who are really, really giving their full selves to the environment. I tend to talk about a healthy culture and environment because I think that leads to engagement. And we've done a lot of work around that since our new CEO came in. Gosh, it's been 3.5 years now, but we rebuilt our entire culture. We defined what our culture meant. We defined what our values are, and we defined operating norms, which is something that I think is a little bit unique. That's how we behave with one another and how we hold each other accountable. And what I love about it is our employees have taken some of these things and they say, hey, we can use that with how we work with our customers and our culture. These apply. So then we've built everything off of these cultures and values. So our recognition is built off of it. Our hiring is built off of it. So all the things that we try to do are based upon the values that we really are trying to embed into the organization. But again, I'm making it sound far more perfect than it is. I mean, we built it, it's there. But then I always say it's a million small things, right? Because I can slap any culture statement up on the wall, but if they witness behaviors that are different than that, it takes away from it, and all of a sudden it actually becomes less meaningful. So that's how we're going after it. And then we, of course, we look at our engagement through a survey every quarter, and so we can really watch the trends and understand what people are saying. And then we use AI to help us with the themes. I still read every single comment because I can't help myself, but it is really nice. One, we should. I mean, if someone's going to write it, I should read it. But it really does help to summarize things thematically, and then you can always add on to it. It's good.
I want to just highlight something you said that was important when you said, are you behaving that way? So oftentimes when I go into organizations, I ask the question of what gets rewarded. So think about your own organization. All these leadership skills that we're talking about, this collaboration, this innovation, think about your own organization. What gets rewarded during the performance reviews? What is it that your salespeople are getting rewarded on? Is it just selling, or is it how you're selling? Is it long-term or short-term? Kelly, I think I interrupted you. Did you want to add something to this?
I was just going to offer a moment of humility and just say we do annual employee engagement and periodic beyond that too. I would not suggest doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
All the people.
Okay, perfect. I would not suggest doing your employee engagement survey a couple weeks after you announce your return to the office program. It did give us very candid and direct feedback about how people felt about the program.
That's a wonderful tip. So thank you. And then, one of the best things about this program is the practical tips, is learning from all of you. If you wouldn't mind, share with us, what are each of you doing to prepare your own self for the future? You want to try first, Kathleen?
I'll try first, yeah. So I do think I'm trying to really walk the talk with that experimenting with technology. In state government, it's not the most innovative place all the time, but I'm in the Office of the Future of Work, we're leading that, and so we're trying to make sure that we're thinking differently about how we break down silos and engage and kind of check our own assumptions. We have a lot of people in state government that have worked there for many years, and I think that that's one of the first things that I try to do is like, what story am I relying on, and can I come up with 3 other stories of what might be happening here for the interpersonal engagement, and then creating that safe place, using team meetings, using supervisor meetings to experiment with technology are sort of the 2 ways I'm trying to disrupt our usual way of working in state government.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
I would say very similar. We have an AI sandbox that we're working with and really excited about, so that's one thing. But the other thing I thought that could be interesting is I'm really working on the skills of storytelling, listening, communication, and really trying to push on those skills versus the other things, because I think those are key, as well as building that within leaders too. Let's talk about what story you're going into this presentation. What are you actually trying to say? You're going into this meeting. What is your point of view on this topic? And leaning into those skills of the storytelling.
That's good. Could you talk a little bit more about storytelling? Because that's something we hear a lot these days.
Yeah, absolutely. It just goes back into the change management, that we're in this constant cycle of change. And so the better you are equipped to talk to the why, to tell about the path it took to get there, I think the better it is on the receiver side that they can understand and get to that place of acceptance versus compliance.
Thank you so much. What are you, Julie?
I am trying to do a ton of reading so I can learn really about technological changes. And I'm pushing myself out of my comfort zone for things that wouldn't naturally be within my role or necessarily even within my company, right? So I'm trying to really think about what kinds of things will we be doing with our fiber network where we would use AI, and really to challenge myself and not just to depend on the business to tell me. Because I'll tell you what, you do that a few times, you kind of feel as if you don't know what you don't know. I mean, by the way, has anyone been reading about the Bitcoin and like the halving of the Bitcoin and what that means? If anyone can explain that to me in English, because I'm sitting there talking to my 18-year-old son, I'm like, look, this is what I think it means. Am I right? It's humbling. You gotta do that stuff. But the world's moving and I don't want to become someone who doesn't understand what's next. So I'm really trying to challenge myself, and then I share it with my team when I don't know to make them feel more safe about not knowing.
It's really great. Then the last thing, we always end, well, before Q&A with piece of advice. So if you look out all these wonderful people, what piece of advice would you give to them about leadership and the future of work? Julie, want to go ahead and take this one?
I would say progress over perfection. Celebrate the incremental milestones and wins, because this is going to change 300 times before it lands, and it probably won't ever land. It will just change again. So just focus on progress over perfection.
And again, that gem that was hidden in there about celebrating the milestones is so important, because most companies or most projects, we wait until the very end of the project to celebrate. And us celebrating, we just go to a team lunch. And you really take the time to celebrate. But celebrating those key milestones are important, because you're right. Who knows if you might be doing something else the next day? So thank you. Calvin, what about you?
I think I would say give yourself a lot of grace. And I think if you start by giving yourself a lot of grace for not knowing things, it will translate to you giving others grace as well, and creating those places where it's okay to not know everything.
That's great. Thank you.
I love those too. So I guess the one I would add would just be to check your assumptions about whether it's about people or technology or who can do what or what they're coming in with. I feel like that's the best thing to kind of rethink about how people are showing up, who's showing up, and what we need to be successful.
That's great. All right, well now, it's about you guys. Questions? This is the Q&A section. Does anybody have any questions for the panelists? Or I should rephrase that. What questions? Oh, Jess.
I'm curious where you all go to find your information. So obviously, as leaders, many people come to you, but where do you go to find best practices to educate yourself?
So the question was,
Okay. Will just jump in and say that I love all there's so many future work reports, but in particular, the Deloitte human capital trends, I feel like are a really great place to dig in and kind of start thinking differently. So I feel like I have my go-to reports researchers that inform my work, and I just try to sign up for all their newsletters and read those things between meetings as one example.
I would just say everywhere. Wall Street Journal, LinkedIn, Harvard Business Review, podcasts from certain thought leaders, people such as in the room like this, but everywhere.
I'm going to try to be additive because I agree with everything you guys said. The other thing that I've been doing is I try to look at the industry-specific things. I'm in telecommunications, so for us, banking has some really good stuff. McKinsey has some really good stuff. So I try to find the things that are unique to our industry so I can see what a lot of our competitors are doing. So, yeah, I mean, you know that, the industry groups, kind of the trade areas, we can go for your specific works, but above and beyond the broad stuff, that's what I try to do.
I'm going to add a little bit to what Kelly said. So Kelly mentioned Harvard Business Review. I know there's this big move towards digital. I encourage everybody to go to get the hard copy. It comes out once every 2 months now. It's like a little mini MBA. And the reason I encourage the hard copy is because you'll see articles that you wouldn't have seen, or you wouldn't have clicked on, you would just skip right over. But if you have the physical HBR, you'll actually read the articles. And especially if it's something that's not normally in your wheelhouse, such as Julie was just talking about, you'll get some insight in there as well. Great question, Jesse. Thank you. Amanda, would you like to?
I love this. So this has been a great discussion. And there goes my glass of wine. Oh my goodness, I'll clean that up afterwards. And it fits so well for a white-collar workforce, but as I think Catherine said, our birth rates are dropping, but they're increasing with our immigrants and migrant communities, language differences. Do you have any best practices for how do you integrate your frontline workers who are limited English speakers in this whole dialogue around reinventing their jobs and how do they become part of the story?
Great question. I would say we have a couple ways we do this. Number one is we have multicultural banking centers. And so we have Spanish-speaking hubs as well as hubs that speak different Asian languages as well. And we found that to work it employs people, so it employs people from the community, it attracts people from the community, it serves people from the community, and it really has been kind of a trifecta there. And then the other thing I would say is the AI tools in this space are super exciting, so really anybody in any language could eventually service anybody in any other language with some of the AI tools. I think that's really exciting.
One of the things we're working on at part of my office this Purdue is thinking about work-based learning and creating kind of new entry points into the workplace and into career pathways. So in particular, we focus a lot on apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeships that allow you to kind of build the skills for the workforce as they are. So if it's a pre-apprenticeship, it's preparing for the apprenticeship. If you're an apprentice, you're employed, and usually an entry-level job, you're learning skills and you earn more money as you learn more skills. So we're trying to take some of the lessons from building and construction trades and apply those in new and emerging industries, because we know that people are coming to Colorado. We had, I think it was 30,000 arrivals in the last 6 months. And they're coming with skills, they're coming with some barriers in terms of language, and so figuring out those entry-level points to bring them in and train them up is one of the big pieces. There's also some cool programs. One that I'm aware of is called Engine, where it's vocational ESL. So it's basically teaching you the skills of a job while also teaching you English, and thinking about how you integrate those into any of the partners that you recruit from or into those entry-level jobs is a big piece of what we're also trying to promote.
That's great, really great. Yes, here.
This is, I guess, an observation, and then I'm looking for you guys to validate if I'm thinking right. So Kelly, one of the things that's very refreshing, your CEO of operations, so much of your discussion has been tied to people and human capital. Maybe you went through the people part of First Banking program, I'm not sure. But I'm seeing, speaking about the future of work and what's happening, it seems like the executive team, no matter what the role is, has to think differently and has to think about people first, regardless of what the business is, et cetera. I would like to kind of get y'all's perspective. Is that validated? Does that make sense? Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we know that our people are our face to our customers, so it is all about the people versus the processes and all the things. But I think it is hard, to be honest. We were having another humility moment. There is a bigger chasm, or people would like to say, you don't know how it is. And so how can we continue to have those listening sessions, break down those barriers to make people really know, we do think about you, we want to hear from you, we want to make this a good place to work for you. And it's not an easy thing to fix, for sure.
So Kelly, you talked about listening sessions, you mentioned that before as well. Walk us through what that looks like and what's that comprised of.
Sure. And Shannon would be best able to talk to this for us, but we did the employee engagement survey. We kind of statistically look, where might we want to target? Where are people feeling less included? Where could we start to improve, whether that's a department or a certain sector of our population? And then we bring them in. We often bring in a third-party facilitator, so it's very safe and they can navigate that, and we can get very candid feedback from those how we want to maybe target or maybe push for improved engagement.
Do you do it with them as a group, or do you do individual interviews as well?
It depends on how big it is. I think generally as a bigger group, we have done it. We found that to be it. I like the thought of individual as well.
Well, I did it with the police department one time, and we tried it as a group, it didn't work very well. So the one-off took better.
I'll say two things. I'll answer this in two ways, because we actually do listening as well. We call it Z-chats. And so the CEO and I, twice a month, we have anyone can sign up. It's 10 to 15 people. We keep it very, very small, and they can ask us anything. It's a safe environment. No topics are off limits, and I say that every single time. And in those sessions, we've learned so much from what the front line wants and needs, and we've solved so many issues. Because my CEO was great about, that's wrong, we're going to fix that. Calm down, I don't know if I can fix that, but it's wonderful because people really, they really do open up to us, and it gives him insight that he might not get if he wasn't talking to 10 to 20 people individually in that kind of settings. And then because we're distributed, we also do what we call our distributed town halls, where Steve and I travel around and we go to places where we have concentrations of people and we bring them all together. And oftentimes, that we just went down to Florida, we have a ton of people, field folks in Florida who are kind of quite honestly maintaining and operating our network there. And they all came, and they came to a central place, and we fed them, and we talked to them for 2 hours about whatever they wanted to talk about. So I just think remaining really grounded and listening to people, that's really the best way that you can stay engaged, because I can talk to leadership until the day is long. They do listen to me, but I bring Steve out to one of those events, he hears it and sees it in a different way.
That's great.
I think that is so cool, and we were talking about generational differences. I feel like that's such a wonderful aspect of Gen Z. They will ask you anything. There's a double-edged sword there, but you will get the truth.
And Julie, for those Z-chats, do you invite people, or is it just open registration?
It's open registration when we do the virtual ones, and clearly when we go on location, we invite everyone who's in that location. And then the night before, we always come in a night early. We pull together any leaders that are within a 50 or 100-mile radius, and we take them out to a nice dinner just to get their perspective as well. We do it quarterly. I mean, it's not monthly. We simply couldn't do that, but we do it quarterly.
That's great, thank you. Oh, Patty.
All right, I'm going to encourage all of you to put the microphone closer to your mouth because there's like a fan. So back here, it's a little hard to hear you. Anyway, that's not the question. The question is probably for Catherine, and that is, I have a younger son at 25 who said, college is not for me. And so you talked about ESL and you talked about immigrants coming in. What do you do too for people, like how do kids find out about apprenticeship or internship programs? Where do they even go if they are like my 25-year-old who's smart and capable but was not going to go through college?
Yeah, absolutely. I often, as I pay my student loan payment every month, I think, oh, I should have done an apprenticeship. So we are working actively to, one, just grow the number of apprenticeships. We have about 500 apprenticeship programs, primarily in the building and construction trades, and we have about 7,000 people that participate in them. The majority of those are 24 to 34 as entering apprenticeships, so now's a great time to get into an apprenticeship. And with all of the federal infrastructure dollars coming in, if you have anyone that's interested in the trades, as I pay my student loans, I'm like, if I welded something, I could have done an electrician, anything. It would have been so much more cost effective sooner. So we are working to grow them, number one. We also have outreach specialists that we're placing in high schools to try to raise awareness and kind of counter and add to the narrative that like college is the best option. We're trying to connect CTE programs. And then we do engage our public workforce system, community colleges and institutions of higher ed and other nonprofits to become ambassadors for apprenticeships. We have a website, I would encourage everyone to check it out, apprenticeship.colorado.gov, and you can find what types of programs exist and get plugged into those. So I would say we have a lot more work to do to get the word out there and also to change the stigma associated with the apprenticeship. We're also trying to connect it so that you can do an apprenticeship while you're also getting a college degree, so it's not an either or, it's this value add, so you're getting that work experience. That's part of a larger system change. So yeah, there are tons of opportunities, lots of growth, and even though the bulk of our apprenticeships are in the building and construction trades, we have growing apprenticeships in IT, cybersecurity, healthcare, education. We're trying to think about pretty much any industry that can benefit from growing your own talent, shaping the talent that you need. We want to talk to you and build an apprenticeship program.
Can you give that website again, please?
Apprenticeship.colorado.gov.
Thank you.
And I'll send the link as well to everybody for that too. What other questions do you have?
I want to know from Kelly, at what age did Gen X think they would get
I have to look at, it didn't register, I am Gen X, and so I'm like, oh, we're very non-dramatic, like, we don't have to do this kind of thing, right? I'm guessing it's 21 or 22, but I didn't remember that one off the top of my head. 21. It creeped up.
See, if anybody wants to.
Yes, you have to have your own Netflix account, Catherine.
If you have Chat GPT pulled up, you can ask Chat GPT.
Answer.
I want to thank everybody so much for coming. We have still some food, there's still some beverages. We will all be around if you want to connect with any of the analysts. We also have some other alumni back here that spoke about change. Some spoke about crisis, someone else just spoke about burnout. So feel free to just enjoy and
Thank you, Anna. Hi, I'm Amanda Raker-Kimmelman, and I'm with Mercer. We have been a partner of Executive Voices since pretty early on. If you don't know us, we are human capital consultants. We're global, but we have over 150 employees here in Denver. And we have a piece of research that really resonated on today's topic and the things we talked about today is the Global Talent Trends Report. I would love to share it with any of you that would be interested, but there's 4 main themes this year, and a couple of them resonated here for me. One is driving human-centric productivity. And we heard so much today about the people and the importance of your people. They are really your most valuable asset to your organizations. And the other one is anchoring in trust and equity. And for me, I'm continuously blown away by the executives and this community that we have in Denver and in Colorado, and your all's trust in one another, and your willingness to share and talk about issues of leadership. So I really want to thank all of our panelists today for being here, as well as Anna for all your work. Thank you. All right.